If you're stamping letters into leather and the results look fuzzy, uneven, or just not quite right, it might not be your technique. You could just be using the wrong surface. In this video, we're going to look quickly first at how leather stamping works so we can properly understand the process. Then we're going to jump into an experiment to see which is the king of stamping, the anvil or the punching block. So when we stamp into leather using either a logo or letters, we're pressing a shape into the surface of the leather. But I think the surface below the leather actually affects the clarity of that impression. When I first started in leathercraft, I wasn't focusing on the surface that I was putting my leather onto. So I want to do an experiment today to test out which is the best one and to see how does it really affect the results. If you're interested in stamping letters into leather, open up my 5 top tip video. This will be up on the screen or in the description now. In that video, I share my 5 top tips to help improve letter spacing and clarity and what really works well for me. So looking at the two surfaces, the anvil and the punching block, and thinking about this imprint that we're leaving, so we probably do want a firm surface below our leather. And this makes sense because we want the leather to stay where it is, but to be compressed in the areas where the stamp is pressing into it, so that a really nice, crisp, permanent imprint is left. But how much of a difference does it really make? I'm not an expert, but I'm going to test this out today. We can do an experiment so we can all learn something new. If you have any better suggestions for me to improve my stamping, I'd love to hear it in the comments section. Let's all learn together. So a punching block is great for absorbing the impact from hole punches or stitching chisels, but for stamping, it might absorb too much of that energy that we actually want to direct into compressing the leather. And this might lead to a weak impression, whereas an anvil is a solid surface. That's not going anywhere. And we use this for setting rivets, and it works great. So I think this might reflect more of that energy back into the leather, leading to a crisper, stronger imprint. But that might not be the case. So for this test, we're going to be using a veg tan over a chrome tan. And I've talked in previous videos why I use veg tan for almost all of my stamping. Drop a comment down below if you'd like to see a full deep dive into the difference between veg tan and chrome tan. So let's test this out. I've got 2 identical pieces of leather, both a raw veg tan, the same thickness, the same temper. I'm going to be using the same stamp set, I'm going to be using the same mallet, but one goes on a punching block and the other goes on an anvil. We're going to test out a variety of stamps today on both the anvil and the punching block and see if there really is a difference.
Right, so let's grab a couple pieces of veg tan, label them up, and we will start the experiment. So the anvil is this super solid foundation that we can stamp onto. And when we do stamp, whether it's letters, logos, whatever, the force is going to come back up into the leather because it can't go down. So what I think this is going to do is it's going to lead to a nice crisp impression just below the stamp. And now let's contrast that with the punching block. So this absorbs energy, it has a lot more movement, it squishes down. So when we're stamping down into it, we're going to get less of that force that comes back up into the leather, and I think leading to a less crisp and more faded, less sharp contrasting stamp. But let's test this out, because I'm curious.
If you've got any value out of this video so far, please like it, please subscribe for more leather experience, science deep dives, and leather tutorials. Thanks so much, your support really helps me to continue making these videos.
Now, every good stamp starts with some casing. We want to make sure that we get that leather nice and wet, so it gives a nice contrasted shape. I'm going to start with the letter A, which gives me quite a wide shape, and then move to something much narrower, the J, probably the narrowest letter that we can do. And there are complexities that come with this, like overstamping, like getting the edge of the stamp into it, so you've got to be careful. Next, I'm going to use my custom contour logo, and this is quite a difficult stamp, but it gives us a nice appreciation of a different shape and see how that can be stamped into the leather. And we're going to finish it up with my text logo, and this is now over 1 inch or 25mm wide, which is roughly the limit for hand stamping if you want to get consistent results. But I do have a trick, so I like to rotate it slightly and try and get all angles to get a nice crisp stamp. Maybe I'll do a video on that one day. But this is finishing up the last part of the experiment. Let's check out the results.
So the experiment is over and I'm actually really surprised at the result of this. So when we compare the anvil to the punching block, we can't really see a difference in the end result in the crispness of the stamp. Across all of the 4 different tested examples, from the letters down to the map logo, down to the text logo, really between the 2 examples with the anvil and the punching block, it's very similar. And I've got to say, I think they turned out really nicely. There's a nice even depth of impression throughout all of the different stamps. And there's no obvious under or over stamping that can really easily occur when hand stamping and can potentially ruin a piece. I've had this happen to me so many times. So I tried to keep it consistent as much as I could across the 2 test pieces, but obviously there are some things that we can't completely control. So it's the same piece of leather, the same stamps, the same amount of casing or wetting the leather. And I tried to keep the number of mallet blows very similar between the 2. So we should keep that in mind regardless. I have to say, when I was stamping, I did prefer to use the anvil. It just felt more secure. It felt like it wasn't going anywhere. It didn't really come out in the end result, because the results look very similar, but really it was just a feeling, and it was definitely noticeable while stamping. So the results are very similar between the 2, apart from one interesting aspect. So the anvil has actually marked the back of the stamp, and you can see it faintly when you're looking at it up close. So the anvil is obviously a much tougher surface than the punching block, designed for setting rivets and other fasteners versus absorbing the energy from stitching chisels. And it seems that the leather that was below the stamp has been compressed at the bottom rather than being compressed better at the top, which is what I thought would happen. Whereas the punching block here really doesn't have any impressions. The piece of leather is basically unmarked where we've stamped it. And that's really interesting. So has this changed my process for stamping letters or logos into leather? Well, maybe. So I'm going to use the anvil for almost all of my stamping. It provides that nice, tough surface. It feels more secure. But when stamping on the inside face, so maybe a bag or a wallet, what I'm going to do here is actually use the punching block going forwards. So stamping onto the punching block will allow me to get that same nice crisp stamp, but with no visible mark on the inside. So elevate it just that little bit more on a professional looking level. So hopefully this is a really useful additional tip that you can take away from this video. So for this raw veg tan, did it make a difference? I don't think so. But it may do with other types of tannage, with different tempers and thicknesses, and from different animals. Maybe I'll test that out in a future video, part 2. So if you have any thoughts why the anvil and the punching block gave very similar results, please drop them in the comments section down below. I'd really love to hear your ideas on that. Also drop a comment down below, let me know what stamping surface works really well for you. I'd love to hear your experience on this. If you like this video, you may enjoy one of my others. This channel is focused on helping beginners get into leather work, or even teaching experienced crafters a new skill, and creating a community to share knowledge so we can all learn better. Thanks so much for watching. Have a great day.